And now, live and uncensored, broadcasting from the great state of Texas, worldwide, it's David Knight.
Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're here with Gabe Hoffman. He is the producer of An Open Secret. And make sure you get that. It's not Open Secret, but An Open Secret. Very important film. You know, we had a controversy about a year and a half ago. We had reviving the controversy surrounding Corey Feldman and Corey Haim. You know, Corey Feldman is now in his 40s. Had come out and said, talked about his friend, Corey Haim, who's now dead. He was raped at the age of 11 by a man. And so Corey Feldman was talking about that. And then we had, and he took some heat for that. And then we had Elijah Wood start tweeting about it and saying that, you know, it's amazing what is going on in Hollywood. I would love to love names, so forth. And then when they started coming down on him hard, he goes, well, I was talking about this documentary film, An Open Secret. And so we have the producer of that film here with us now, Gabe Hoffman. And you did a great job in terms of exposing this thing that Hollywood does not want to be exposed. As I pointed out before, same director, same crimes, if it's okay, and they'll nominate her for an Oscar if she talks about these crimes in the Catholic Church, but don't talk about it in Hollywood. They did everything they could to shut you down in the film festivals, but once you got into one of them, it exploded. Drudge covered it. We had Elijah Woods talking about it. But you know, when they try to cover this up, you know, now Corey Haim is not there to talk about it, is he?
He isn't. And so many victims of child sex abuse in Hollywood, former child stars, turn to drugs and alcohol to try to drown their pain. Some even commit suicide. But there are literally hundreds that are not anywhere near as famous who are no longer here to tell their tale. And that's why folks like Corey Feldman or films like An Open Secret are so important. You know, there's a stereotype out there that if you're a former child star and you got sexually abused, there must be something wrong with you and your family. When you watch our film, An Open Secret, our 5 brave survivors, you see they're from good, all-American homes, parents did the right thing, so on and so forth. But these pedophiles are good. They get close, and they pull it off anyway. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they know how to get what they want. You know, one of the things that Elijah Wood said, he pulled back and he goes, well, my mom knew about that, and she made sure that I didn't go to any of those parties, and she watched them like very, very closely. But in your trailers, you're pointing out, there's this seductive thing about offering access to fame and money and all these other things. All these people, oh yeah, I can get on the Disney Channel. Yeah, I could turn out like Miley Cyrus. I mean, who would not want that for their kids, right? Well, I don't know about Miley Cyrus, but
so that's the thing. Maybe people could start to learn from that. But you know, it's also the juncture of politics in Hollywood, as we've seen in the UK, as we saw with Jimmy Savile, okay? Or Savile, I think is the way they pronounce it there, like Savile Row. Anyway, he is an entertainer who gets heavily involved with the politicians and so forth, just like Harvey Weinstein, okay? And there's a reason for that, because it's all about the power. These guys have immense power over people's lives because of that lure of fame, that lure of money. And so that power in and of itself is a kind of drug, isn't it, that draws them into politics, those same types of people.
Absolutely. I mean, Jimmy Savile famously went to Margaret Thatcher's annual holiday party for something like 10 years in a row. He was Bill Cosby, probably cubed. He would even commit pedophilia on children that he was visiting in the hospital. They only found this out after he died, but there were literally hundreds of victims. And I'll tell you what, the UK is way ahead of the US in addressing this problem. Did you know there's something called the Savile effect?
No.
So what that means, and it's been shown by...
You know what? Let's hang on, because we got to take a break in about 25 seconds here, and we'll get into that if you can stay with us into the next segment, because I'm sure the audience would like to hear about the Savile effect, and it's not about bespoke clothing. It's about keeping things secret. And, of course, there were numerous investigations that began at Scotland Yard that were shut down by the people higher up. There was a documentary that was being done on him in the BBC, and the higher-ups there shut it down as well. I'm David Knight. We'll be right back with Gabe Hoffman. Stay with us. Just before the last break, we were here with Gabe Hoffman, producer of An Open Secret, exposing pedophilia in Hollywood. And, of course, it's something that, as we see with Harvey Weinstein, there's a juncture between the entertainment industry and politics, and that also existed in the UK. The person who embodied that probably the most there was Jimmy Savile, and or Savile, we should say. That's I keep going back to the American pronunciation of it. But he was just talking about the effect that this exposure of his crimes had in the UK. Tell us about that effect, Gabe.
Sure. You can Google it, Savile effect. So what happened is, this was a few years ago. The UK took this very seriously. They started exposing it. I mean, Jimmy Savile had a weekly variety program on the BBC, which was like all three networks combined in the UK, huge for decades and decades and decades. There's almost nobody bigger. So he dies. This all comes out. Huge shock. Society starts taking this seriously. And what you saw is two things happen. First, the reports of prior rape, sexual assaults, and all that across general society, as measured by their own crime stats, went up something like 100, 200, 300%, measured by Scotland Yard and others. Then, a couple years later, the incidence of new rapes, sexual assaults, and other things started going down by double digits. So what I'm trying to say in conclusion to this is, look, this is happening in Hollywood, and we're a little part of what's exposing it now here on Infowars. But you know what? By getting it out there, talking about it, and bringing down these big, powerful Hollywood pedophiles, give it a couple years, and it's going to affect your life and American society in a positive way.
Yes, that's very important. So the effect is that you have these high-profile, very powerful people. They get brought down, and then the people who are lower down say, hey, you know, even these big guys are getting exposed, and they're not getting a pass on it. So they're definitely going to come for me, okay? So they do come for them. So you see an initial rise, and then it starts to diminish as they get these predators convicted. Other people are scared off from the predation. So maybe in the U.S. we'll have an open secret effect.
Exactly. If you see somebody as courageous that's going after a Harvey Weinstein and they're successful, if you're somebody out there who's not famous and it's, heaven forbid, a family member, coach, whatever, all of a sudden you see that, you're inspired, and you're not as afraid to bring them down.
And of course, you know, when we look at Harvey Weinstein, when we look at Jimmy Savile, then we understand that kind of a bridge. And there's a lot of this stuff that is going on that is in Washington, D.C., that is in Westminster in the UK, right? We saw that with Heath. It came out, the former Prime Minister, Conservative Prime Minister Edward Heath, came out, all the accusers now that are surfacing, accusing him of pedophilia and things even worse, murders and so forth that are coming out. And so it's gotten so bad that people in the UK have said, we're going to have to stop naming buildings after individuals. We're going to just have to name them after things or events or something in the streets, because now they're having to go back and it's an embarrassment to have all these streets that were named after Heath because this is happening. And we've had Cynthia McKinney, who was former congresswoman, and she said, in referencing your movie as well, she said, well, you know, it's Hollywood now, but it's going to go to Washington, D.C., because we know that this is all about power. And as much power as people like Harvey Weinstein have, there's even more power by the people who are in Washington, D.C. That is the reason that they exist, is to exercise that power.
Absolutely. Big government exists to grow even larger and larger and have ever-increasing amounts of control over our lives. And Hollywood is losing its grip on having its control over what we watch and what we use for entertainment.
And there's something about these people that, you know, while everybody else looks at this and says, you know, this is just incredibly sick. For them, victimizing young children gives them a sense of power and domination. That's the strange thing about it, isn't it?
It's a complicated power dynamic. Yeah. And it's important for Infowars viewers to understand that this same power dynamic of being away from home where you're safe, where your parents can protect you, being away for long hours, be it a soccer travel team or whatever the case may be, you're vulnerable all of a sudden. So it's not just about bringing down Hollywood. Our film, An Open Secret, you'll see, and in some cases, the home videos, if you pay close attention, of how the pedophiles were doing the grooming process. You'll pick up tips to figure out how to spot a grooming process if it's happening in your town or your neighborhood or, heaven forbid, your own living room.
Yeah, that's the important thing, because a normal person can't get into the mindset of somebody who would do something like this. And you're saying that by watching this and hearing the experiences of other people, you will get an insight into their MO, their method of operation, so that you can set up some guards about that. That's the biggest problem with all of this stuff. When we talk about this stuff to people, we talk about so many things that the elites are doing. Pedophilia is one of those. And people will look at it and go, I can't believe that would happen. Why would anybody do that? That's just absolutely insane. And so a normal person can't understand why certain things that are being done by the powerful elite, and pedophilia is just one of them. They can't understand why this would happen, because it's just so far outside of the possibility of anything that they would ever want to do or even consider to do. And so that's the key thing, is to understand what their tactics are and their techniques, and hearing that testimony from somebody who's been victimized by it, so that you're inoculated against it or warned about the way that they operate.
And on an open secret, just like in Deliver Us from Evil, we get you into the minds of the pedophiles in their own words. You get to hear what their justifications are. You get to learn their tactics and all that, so that, yeah, you can spot them. If, heaven forbid, there's one in your community, you're going to have a much better shot at making sure that they don't hurt more kids than they already have.
Yeah, and you referenced Deliver Us from Evil. That was the director of An Open Secret, Amy Berg. That was the film that she did about pedophile abuse in the Catholic Church, Deliver Us from Evil. And that was widely acclaimed in Hollywood. So then she wanted to do one about, well, it's also happening not just in Catholic Church, but it's also happening in Hollywood. That's when they want to try to shut that down, try to censor it. Same director, same crime, but different group of people.
The American people are clearly on our side. In 1 week, something on the internet that just started with us saying in our Twitter feed, over 1 million views. The response has been truly incredible. So we know the American people are getting on our side against Hollywood, because, hey, the facts are out there, and Hollywood can't control. You know, they can control the distribution. They can control financing in a lot of cases, except for us. They can control whether it goes on video on demand or whatever, you know, the Amazons and the Netflix, and, you know, they can control that, but they can't control the internet, and ultimately Hollywood can't control you.
I know that you put it out for a short period of time for free on Vimeo. Did you ever get distribution with Netflix and Amazon anyway?
None yet, and at this point, we don't need them, and we don't care, because the American people are rising up to take down these powerful Hollywood pedophiles.
But I think it's important for people to understand that they refuse to distribute this film. At the same time that we have the takedown of the guy who was head of the film unit at Amazon, right? For all these
maybe that
had something to do with it. So
it's funny. There's always reasons behind these things, and sometimes you get really lucky and you find out what they are sooner, like the Amazon guy, and others maybe you don't find out till later, but I'm sure you will.
Yeah, that's very important for people to understand where they are in this entire thing. So you've got this on for free at Vimeo as well. And do you have any, I don't want to get you killed, but do you have any plans on going after DC? if you say that, those people will kill you. They won't just shut off your distribution.
I'm just a simple hedge fund manager. This has been a very nice philanthropic project. And the reality is that everybody was afraid of Hollywood, and once we expose Hollywood, and it's being exposed by the American people, they won't be afraid to take down DC either themselves.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Gabe Hoffman. And again, the film is An Open Secret. And we really do thank you for your service in terms of financing this. It really is a philanthropic endeavor here to expose this truth. And you're going to be on later with Alex Jones, and you've got a special announcement with Alex Jones. So stay tuned. Welcome back. Tomorrow we're going to have some massive movements in Catalonia and Spain. Spain says that they're going to take movements to suspend autonomy in Catalonia. We're going to talk about that, the fact that it is an imminent financial crisis. People are pulling cash out of the banks, out of the ATMs today. What is going to happen? We don't know. But this all feeds into the moves that we saw yesterday by former Presidents Barack Obama and George W. Bush as they started criticizing nationalism. And they don't really understand, and neither does the government of Spain, that there are worldwide forces at work here. And I've talked about this before. 150 years ago, there was a worldwide force. Our Civil War was not about slavery fundamentally. Our Civil War was about a consolidation into nation states that was happening in the mid-1800s. You had a revolution that was going on, a civil war going on in Italy at the same time, exactly the same time, in the 1860s, Garibaldi and his people. And it was a movement that pitted the rising industrial class against the established agrarian class. It was a movement to consolidate power, and that movement that began 150 years ago continued. As they consolidated power from regional centers, it continued to consolidate into big nation states, and those nation states continued to consolidate, trying to move towards a world government. First, big regional consolidations like the European Union, or what they were trying to get to, a North American Union. The first step was always economic consolidation. Then they would create a regional government. And then they would combine those regional governments. That's what Zbigniew Brzezinski was talking about when he talked about set up the Trilateral Commission. He was appointed to run that because he had laid out the case earlier in a book where he said, yeah, we're going to create these regional power structures. We'll combine power in North America. We'll combine power in Europe and also in Asia. And then we'll use America as a centerpiece to pull these all together. And they were so close. They had the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the Transatlantic Partnership. That was going to basically make America the spine, and it would join these two wings of the globalist government together into an economic union, and then do the same thing that we saw happen in the European Union. Take that combined economic union into a political union. But now it's moving back the other way because people don't like what they've been doing to us. We see what you've been doing to us. We're not stupid. We're not blind. We understand what your plans are. You actually had the audacity to write about them, didn't you? Mia Brzezinski, your dad, actually wrote about this stuff. You put your plans out there. We read your books. We know what you're doing. And so this is a move. This is an organic movement that comes back as many people who haven't even read the plans understand how their country is being taken away, how they're being replaced, how they're sending their money to a distant area that is controlling them and not doing anything with that money to their benefit. And they've had enough. And so they're pushing back. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about some of the crazy stuff coming up from the left. And at the next segment, we're going to be talking to Larry Pinkney about some of the division that is happening here in this country as well. Real quickly, some of the big specials that we have at InfoWarsStore.com. It's what funds this program, this operation here at InfoWars. BrainForce Plus, 50% off. You'll find that at InfoWarsStore.com, the biggest discount we've ever had off of BrainForce. And you'll also find Super Male Vitality, one of our most popular products, one of our earliest products, 30% off. And Anthroplex is 50% off. And three very important supplements, iodine, selenium, vitamin B12, you can get those all 40% off. Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, 40% off. BioTrue Selenium, 40% off. Secret 12, our vitamin B12, 40% off. And finally, for a limited time only, you can get 20% off of Infowars Wake Up America. It's what all of us here on the early morning crew love. That's one of the things we look forward to in the morning is our cup of Wake Up America. That gets us going. It's a great tasting coffee. You can get it 20% off with the code WAKEUP when you enter that at checkout. That's 20% off of Infowars Wake Up America with the code WAKEUP at checkout. All right, so let's look at what's going on in Europe. The Catalonian crisis. They had the referendum. The Spanish government sent in the jackbooted thugs to beat women, children, elderly women, to try to shut down that vote. But they still had 43% of the people vote. And of those 43% of the people who voted, 90% were in favor of independence. Why did that happen? Well, it was because they said we want some more autonomy to govern ourselves. They had their own language, their own culture, but they were the most vital, economically, the most vital part of the Spanish economy. And they were sending a lot of money to Spain that wasn't coming back, quite frankly. Spain was living at their expense. It was a different culture, different language. They said, we want a little bit more autonomy. How about that? They said, all right, we'll give you a little bit more. And then they took it back. And so they said, all right, well, you're going to do that. I think we should just leave. And that was the basis of this. Now, as they said they wanted to have a democratic vote, instead of allowing that to go forward, as the UK did on Brexit, as they did on Scottish independence, these guys showed up with the truncheon, and they started beating people and trying to shut down that vote. But it happened anyway. But now what Spain is saying is that they're going to double down on their tyrannical fascism. the land that was known for fascism with General Francisco Franco. I mean, it was a running joke by Saturday Night Live back in the 70s. You know, he was on life support. This guy had been there since before World War II. So that was a big cause celeb for many of the Marxists. They would go fight the fascists as if there was some big difference between the two different groups. It's a distinction without a difference. But anyway, after General Francisco Franco died in 75, they created a constitution after they got rid of their fascist dictator. Article 155 of the Constitution cemented the democratic rule 3 years after his death. And now they say that they're going to activate that to take away democratic rule. So that has set off a run on the banks. Catalan separatists are urging supporters to pull their cash from ATMs this morning. This is all coming to a rapid advance. Meanwhile, in Italy, as I said, this is a global movement. People wanting to have some say in their government. This is a global movement, and in Italy, northern Italy, a similar situation. They don't have a separate language or culture, but it is a wealthy area that sends a lot more of its money to the central government than they get back. And so they are going to have a referendum on Sunday. And there are other areas all throughout Europe. And this is one of the reasons why the European Union is not doing anything to help these poor people in Catalonia. Will they succeed? Will they have the guts to do this? And as we look at what's happening here, as we look at these different groups like Bilderberg, remember that as Bilderberg was meeting these globalists in their think tank, one of the things that they talked about was the precariat. All these people that they have put, that their policies, they admit, have put us in a precarious position. But of course, they use the terminology of the Marxists, you know, the proletariat. Oh, they call them the precariat. They say, we're in a precarious position. And I say, no, you're in the precarious position. We're not locked in this room by you. You're locked in this room with us. And there's more of us than there are of you. And we understand that you're the ones who are in the precarious position. That's why we have George W. Bush and Barack Obama attacking President Trump. But one of the things that they realize is that as they take away our money, they take away our income, they've got to try to pacify us some way. So the thing that they want to talk about is a universal basic income. That's being sold even by some former libertarian economists. Now the city of Stockton, California, wants to put out the first basic income grant. Money, free money for everybody. We don't have to worry about where it comes from. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with Larry Pinkney. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're going to be talking to Larry Pinkney. And the world keeps on turning around. It's turned around several times since I've talked to Larry. I haven't talked to him yet about Black Lives Matter and what I'd call the NEFL, this protest that's going on. But I have talked to Larry in the past about his political activism. He's a veteran of the original Black Panther Party, which is distinct from the new Black Panther Party. It's as different as Ricky Ross, the rapper, is from Freeway Ricky Ross, who has come on Infowars and has talked about the efforts to create a crack cocaine epidemic by the CIA to fund a secret war. No, that Ricky Ross that they use is very different from the other one, who is a rapper. And the Black Panther Party is very different from the new Black Panther Party. Larry Pinkney was with them. He's a former political prisoner. He's also an editorial board member for blackcommentator.com. He's featured in the book Saying No to Power. That's the autobiography of a 20th century activist and thinker, William Mandel. And you'll also find him on blackactivistwg.org. That's the Black Activist Writers Guild. And so joining us now is Larry Pinkney. Good to talk to you, Larry.
It is fantastic, David. It's been too long, brother. It's been too long.
It has. So what do you think about this Black Lives Matter and the NEFL that's going on here? Is that going to change anything?
Change anything? Perhaps for the worse. Yeah. But, you know, I love that. What do you call it? The NEFL.
The NEFL, yeah. I had Lionel on. He said, this has become the new thing, like the ice bucket challenge, right? Everybody started doing it. It became a fad. Everybody forgot what it ever even was about, but everybody was doing it. Now we've got even, you know, white city councilors in Ann Arbor, Michigan that are taking a knee while they're doing, the other ones are standing up and doing a pledge to allegiance. I mean, do they really know what they're protesting, or are they really going to change anything? Or like you said, is it just going to change for the worse? I agree with you. I think it's going to change for the worse.
Yeah. And quite frankly, you also asked me, and I'm not, you know me, I don't duck and dodge. You asked me about Black Lives Matter. And the most diplomatic thing that I can say about Black Lives Matter is that they are a farce. They are a farce. F-A-R-C-E. All right? They're not about serving.
Can I put you down as an anti-fascist? Because you're opposing the Black Lives Matter here, so I think that'd be a good thing to be, anti-fascist.
Yes,
but I'm not surprised to hear you say that, because when we've talked in the past, and you talked about the Black Panther Party, you talked about Malcolm X, you said they didn't become a threat to the establishment until they got out of their narrow Black-centric focus. Once they started involving people in the larger community, then they became a danger. And see, if you want to fix the police situation, as I've said many times, why would you concentrate it and say this is simply a black versus blue or a black versus white issue? If you really want to fix it, you're going to go out there and you're going to say to white people, hey, there may be a higher percentage of us that it's happening to, but there's more of you that it's happening to, so make common cause with us to fix this problem.
Right.
But they don't want to fix the problem.
That's right. They don't want to fix the problem. That's the reality. They crave attention. They love attention. All right. But in terms of going into the community and actually doing something in the community, and by doing something, I mean serving the people, body and soul, as we used to say. All right. Not jumping up on primetime news and talking about Black Lives Matter as if all lives are not precious. All lives are precious. Yeah. And as you said, David, we have a commonality. And if they were sincere and for real about wanting to change the systemic horrors that people across the board, black, white, brown, red, and yellow people, that we face, then they would find commonality, work together, even with those with whom they might disagree.
That's right. That's right. Every institution is going to have problems. You know, we've had Frank Serpico. Alex has interviewed him in the past. And one of the things that he said is that every institution is going to have bad individuals in it. So your choice is you're either going to purge those individuals out or you're going to own that bad action. And we have to understand that it's even more than that is involved here, because we've got the directives that are coming out of the central government that are changing the way the police have always policed. And so we have to understand that institutions, human institutions, are never static. They're always changing. They're changing for the better or they're changing for the worse. Can't we come together, people regardless of skin color, and try to make our institutions better instead of letting our institutions divide us by skin color?
Right, and that's the name of the game, as I have been saying for many decades now. The name of the game is to divide, divide, divide. Divide and conquer. Keep people in fear of each other and ignorant of each other. And I want to segue, if I may, very quickly back to what you call the NFL. That's great. That's great. It's Kaepernick as an example. You know, he's absolutely entitled to his opinion, but he is not entitled to hijack and divide the struggle for human rights. And that's what he's doing. He is hijacking. The youngster has no clue, obviously, you know, and he's not entitled to exhort people to kneel when for over 450 years, people of all colors, black, white, brown, red, and yellow, in this country, poor people have been struggling not to kneel, but to stand up, all right, to make changes together, okay? You know, it's. Could you imagine Tommy Smith, John Carlos, Peter Norman, Muhammad Ali? Could you imagine them down on their knees? You know, it's like, man, I mean, think of it.
Or Jim Brown. I mean, Jim Brown has come out and spoken about it, probably the greatest football player ever. And he said, look, you're here, you're representing this team, this is a business, you know, so forth. And you're entitled to do your political protests, but do them on your own time. You know, people don't show up to watch you stop doing this. Like I said before, it's kind of like you go to watch a play, and all of a sudden the guy breaks character and he walks, you know, he's not playing, King George anymore. He walks out to the stage and he starts lecturing you about contemporary politics. And it's like, I didn't pay for this. I don't want to pay this. But that's what the people of the NFL, that's what the people in Hollywood are doing.
Exactly. And, you know, I want to segue right into this thing of kneeling again. You know, think about it from the perspective of not only do I and many others find it deeply offensive to those people who served their country militarily. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with these wars, whether it was Korea or Vietnam or whatever, but they were there. They were there. What does Kaepernick know anything about that?
Yeah.
I mean, he is benefiting from that. My late father, who was a U.S. military Korean War vet, praise him. I praise him because he stood and he did what he thought was right. My cousin, who is still alive, who was a military vet in both Korea and Vietnam, yeah, I praise him because he did what he thought was right. When Colin Kaepernick talks about freedom and justice, he first needs to understand what the price is for freedom and justice. And, you know, and I just got to say this, Mr. Youngster Kaepernick, get off your knees. Stop acting, oh, massa, oh, massa. That's what I'm talking about. Get off your knees. Be like Tommy Smith. Be like John Carlos. Be like Peter Norman. They stood tall. They made their statement. And this is what we should be learning from our history. And by the way, you notice that those three athletes, that one of them, who I think is not referred to enough, was actually white and from Australia. So yeah, I think that's important to note.
Well, I think it's also important to note that it is the owners who are also the billionaire owners who are paid for their businesses, their stadiums are subsidized by taxpayers. It's the business owners who are encouraging this as well, and they're of the political stripe. You've seen ample evidence of people who are conservatives who wanted to buy an NFL team. They didn't let them join the club. This is a club that has always been about left-wing politics, and they're showing their colors right now. We'll be right back with Larry Pinkney. I'm David Knight. Stay with us. One thing leads to another. And where is this Black Lives Matter NFL protest? Where is that leading us? Where did it come from? And where are we going with it? We're talking to Larry Pinkney, a veteran of the Black Panther Party, the old Black Panther Party, as distinguished from the new one that is all about division. They were about, at the end of it, where Larry Pinkney was involved, they were about the coming together of people, black and white. They were about a community coming together to solve problems, to reform their institutions. That's not what Black Lives Matter is about. That's what we were just talking about in the last segment. We're going to go back to Larry in just a moment. Before we do, real quickly, however, I want to tell you about some of the products that we sell to fund our operation. We are under economic censorship. That's the term that Julian Assange used to talk about the demonetizing of Ron Paul and others. And, of course, we've experienced the same thing here at Infowars. They try to shut down the ads that we receive, the ads that we serve. They try to shut down our products. They try to shut down, demonetize our videos, our view counts, you name it. It's a full spectrum economic censorship. But we sell directly to you, and your support of us by the products that you buy is what funds this operation. We're very grateful. We put some of our best-selling products on deep discounts. And let me give you an example of some of these. Super Male Vitality, 30% off. Anthroplex, 50% off. Brain Force Plus, 50% off. And that's the deepest discount we've ever had on Brain Force. My favorite supplement that we have here. I use it every day, and it helps me to focus my mind, to focus my thought. It'll make you alert. Try it, and you will love it. I guarantee it. And it's a great time to try it when it is 50% off. And if you've tried it and you like it, it's a great time to stock up. 50% off. That's going to be ending very soon because we have to keep supplies in stock for people who are set up for auto ship. Also, we have 3 very important supplements. You need to make sure that you've got sufficient iodine, selenium, B12 in your diet. And we have great and pure natural supplements of that. We have Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine. We get that from Deep Earth Source. That's 40% off. BioTrue Selenium. We call it BioTrue because it's 100% organic. It's made from 100% organic mustard seed, so there's no fillers, no synthetics, and no GMO. And that selenium, that is 40% off. And Secret 12, our vitamin B12 formula. You can take it in a liquid supplement format, so you don't have to get the injection. Same effect. This vitamin B12, we call it Secret 12, and it is 40% off. And finally, 20% off of Infowars Wake Up America coffee. My favorite way to start out the morning. You can get 20% off when you enter the code WAKEUP at checkout. That's 20% off Wake Up America with the code WAKEUP at checkout. Well, let's go back to Larry Pinkney. We were talking about the Black Lives Matter and the NFL and the fact that these billionaires, this is a club, Larry, isn't it? I mean, we've had, you look at conservative individuals, whatever. You look at Donald Trump, wanted to get a team once. He was blocked by that. As a matter of fact, one of the owners of the team, his last name's Khan, I think it was the Ravens or something, but he's criticizing Donald Trump. He said, this is nothing but sour grapes. And we heard the same sort of thing. They kept Rush Limbaugh out. He wanted to be part of a consortium that was going to buy an NFL team. No, you can't come in. Donald Trump, you can't come in. It's a billionaires club, and we know that they're coming from a particular political philosophy that to keep people out. And it was amazing when Donald Trump started talking about this. Their response was one of pure elitism. How dare you disrespect the NFL? When everybody was concerned about the fact they were disrespecting the flag, the national anthem, and the things that stood behind it, like the military veterans. I had Stacey Washington on. She was saying, hey, in the service I had, the flag that we would fold as we were having funeral services for fallen soldiers and everything. That's a very important thing to people who have been in the military. And they're just totally deaf to the public, to the fans. They don't understand the fans are a very important part of that. Owners and players, you're not going to have them if you don't have any fans. What do you think about that?
Well, they don't care, David. They don't care. And, you're absolutely correct. It's about themselves. It's about controlling, manipulating, being in total and complete control, economically, socially, and politically. So they don't care. But they're going to start to care when they start losing their revenue, when people start turning away and saying, you know what, I didn't come here for this, okay? And this is something that I'm quite sure that in a matter of time, we are going to see the NFL having to change its tune, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, they've gone from first to worst in terms of ratings of professional teams. I mean, they're the only sport that everybody has an annual party around, the Super Bowl party. It has been America's team sport, but it isn't going to stay that way because the open hostility, and again, we saw it with Obama and Bush attacking Trump yesterday, the open hostility to the values that they present. And this is part of an international movement of people trying to devolve power from the center. There's been, as I pointed out earlier, 150 years, power has been moving towards the center, into the big nation states, into a global government. But now it's moving back. We're seeing in Catalonia and other places that are having referenda. And that is a part of the movement. And Trump and Bush think that they can shut that down by saying you're not going to be able to wish away globalism. I think we can't wish it away, but I think we can push it away, don't you?
Well, I think that Obama and Bush are playing the same old tune on the same old fiddle, and this is why every action that they take is one to really take power away from everyday, ordinary black, white, brown, red, and yellow people. We must not allow that to happen. Idiots like Maxine Waters, Barbara Lee, Nancy Pelosi, John Lewis, Al Sharpton, these people do not care about our country as a whole. They only care about personal political power, and the same can be said about the NFL. And we all know about, or we should know by now, about the shenanigans of Bush and Obama, Drone Man. So it's imperative, I think, to keep on the high ground, to stay focused on what we the people are about. We're not going to stop. We are not going. Remember that song, David? We've only just begun. Well, we've only just begun.
That's right. And they have, just as they've got a football league, there's a political league. And we got two phony teams. And you look at, they talk about football fans or this kind of fan or whatever. It comes from the term fanatic. People get fanatic about these particular teams. They got their own colors. They got their own mascots. And they've got their stars and everything. But the same thing is true in politics. They use that same kind of psychology on us in politics. And so people need to break that phony team loyalty to Democrats and to Republicans. And we can see that they're both the same team, both part of that same DCPL political league with those speeches that were given yesterday with Obama and with George W. Bush, can't we?
Yes, and it should be obvious. I believe it is obvious. I believe that more and more people, an increasing amount of people, are actually waking up to the game. Waking up to the game. And this frightens the system. It terrifies them. You know what? But that's their problem. Our job is to keep on waking people up and to reject both of these two sides of the same coin, Democrats and Republicans. They need to get with the people. The people don't need to get with them. They need to get with us.
That's right. And the waking up process, I think, that we're starting to see now with people in terms of the NFL. They're realizing that this is a game that they've been playing at our expense because they get the big subsidies. These billionaires and their millionaire players are going out there and they're hitting up the taxpayers to spend $500 million on stadiums or whatever. I mean, in Minnesota, they had $1 billion deficit. And what did they do when the Vikings said we want a new stadium? Well, they went another $500 million into debt. So they increased their debt by 50% and gave it to these billionaires. People are waking up to that. People are waking up to the fact they got to pay this stuff off. Even people who don't go to the game have to pay for this stadium. And the same thing is happening in Washington. Once people realize how they're exploiting us, like the NFL is exploiting us, then it really is game over, isn't it, Larry?
That's right. And the clock is ticking. And it's ticking in our favor. That when I say our, I mean black, white, brown, red, and yellow, everyday, ordinary people. It's ticking in our favor. So the system, all right, the deep state, the power elite, whatever you want to call them, all put together, are going to pull out every stop to try and to derail the people's real struggle, the genuine, everyday, ordinary people. All of my brothers and sisters. And speaking of brothers and sisters, I send my love and strength not only to you, David, but to all of my brothers and sisters at Infowars. Keep it up. All power to the people.
Well, thank you, Larry. Yeah, we love you, too, here at Infowars because you break that paradigm. You break those kinds of, they like to divide and conquer people, obviously. And, you know, when their strategies don't work and people want their own independence, we see them come out with the truncheon and the jackboot, just as we're seeing in Spain. But thank you so much for joining us. Larry Pinkney, again, you can find him at Black Activist WG. That stands for Writers Guild, blackactivistwg.org. And it's always a pleasure to have Larry Pinkney. Oh, you can also find him on blackcommentator.com. I'm David Knight. Thank you for joining us.